My wife wanted half of everything in the divorce. Turns out, none of it was mine. At 25, I had just started my first real job, working in my family's business. As their only child, my parents were incredibly supportive and had always trusted me with everything. Life seemed perfect, newly married, a dream honeymoon, and a promising career ahead. My wife and I had just returned from a luxurious honeymoon in a tropical paradise, filled with guided tours, scenic drives, and exotic beaches, or so I thought. One evening, I decided to go through the photos and videos we'd taken, including some clips from the rental car, a habit I'd picked up from my dad to document any potential damages. What I found changed everything. The video wasn't what I expected. Instead of scenic drives or candid moments, there she was, my wife, completely naked and entangled with the tour guide we had hired. The footage was explicit, and the location unmistakable. The very car we rented. While I had been at the hotel arranging bookings for the next day, she was sneaking off with him. I froze, my stomach churning. As I scrolled through more files, the betrayal deepened. It wasn't a one-time lapse. There were several clips showing the same pattern. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a violation during what was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives. That night, I didn't confront her. I needed time to think. As I reflected, I realized something startling. Almost everything we had wasn't truly ours. The house we lived in belonged to my father. The car she drove was registered under the family business. Even the credit cards she flaunted were linked to accounts in my father's name. The only thing that was genuinely mine was $25,000 I had saved from freelancing during my studies. She had no idea. She thought we were building a shared life, but the reality was very different. The next day, I began preparing. First, I backed up the videos to multiple secure drives. Then, I consulted a family lawyer, a close friend of my father. The lawyer assured me that since everything was under my father's name, she had no legal claim to it. Her demands for half would backfire spectacularly. That evening, I decided to confront her. Casually, I asked, "What was your favorite part of the honeymoon?" She smiled. "Oh, everything, the beaches, the food, the drives with the guide. It was all amazing." "The guide, huh?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "You seem to really enjoy his company." Her smile faltered. "Well, yeah, he was helpful." "Why?" Without a word, I pulled out my phone and played one of the videos. Her face turned pale as she watched herself on screen. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice icy. She stammered excuses. "It was a mistake. I was drunk. He took advantage of me." I shook my head. "Don't insult my intelligence. This wasn't a one-time thing. You knew exactly what you were doing." She broke down, begging for forgiveness, but I was unmoved. "I want a divorce," I said coldly. "You'll hear from my lawyer." Her demeanor shifted instantly. "You can't do this to me," she screamed. "I gave up everything to be with you. You owe me." "Owe you?" I laughed bitterly. "Everything we have isn't even mine. It's my father's. You won't get a single cent." Her face twisted with rage. "I'll fight you in court. I'll make sure I get what I deserve." "Go ahead and try," I said, standing firm. "You'll regret it." Little did she know, my father was already in the loop. After showing him the evidence, he was livid. Not just at her betrayal, but at her audacity. He immediately revoked her access to the house, credit cards, and any family assets. The next day, she realized this when her cards were declined, and she was locked out of the house. That's when the threats began. Her texts ranged from begging for forgiveness to outright threats. "If you think you can throw me out like trash, you're wrong. I'll ruin you." I wasn't surprised. She had always been manipulative, but this time, she was outmatched. Every piece of leverage she thought she had was already neutralized. Still, I decided to play it smart and let her dig her own grave. I didn't respond to her texts. Instead, I forwarded them to my lawyer. He assured me they'd be useful if she tried to file a frivolous claim in court. Later that day, she stormed into my office at the family business. I was in a meeting with my father and senior staff when the receptionist called to warn me. "She's here, and she's causing a scene," the receptionist whispered. I stepped outside to find her yelling, demanding to speak to me. "You think you can lock me out of my house?" she screamed. "You don't get to make decisions without me." Calmly, I replied, "It's not your house. It's not even my house. Everything you're fighting for doesn't belong to either of us." Her face turned red. "You're lying. I'm your wife. I'm entitled to half." "Let's leave that to the courts to decide," I said, stepping back into the office and signaling security to escort her out. That evening, I sat down with my parents to explain everything. My father, usually level-headed, was furious. "She thinks she can pull this off and walk away with what we've worked for? She has no idea who she's messing with." My mother, though shocked, offered a more compassionate perspective. "You deserve better than this," she said. "We'll make sure she doesn't get away with it." With their full support, I felt more confident than ever. My father's legal team began drafting divorce papers, ensuring every loophole was closed. Meanwhile, I gathered additional evidence to strengthen my case. As the days passed, her antics grew desperate. She reached out to mutual friends, spinning a narrative that I was abusive and controlling. Thankfully, most of them knew me well enough to see through her lies. Some even came forward with stories of how she had been bragging about her freedom during our honeymoon, a freedom that, in hindsight, was her affair with the travel guide. Her ultimate move came when she filed for divorce and demanded half of everything. In her filing, she accused me of emotional abuse and financial control, claiming I denied her access to our assets. What she didn't realize was that her claims were as weak as her loyalty. During the first court hearing, my lawyer presented videos, texts, and financial records proving that nothing was in my name. The judge was unimpressed with her arguments, especially after learning of her infidelity. Her lawyer tried to argue that the videos were an invasion of privacy, but my lawyer countered that they were legally obtained from a rental vehicle for documentation purposes. The turning point came when my father testified. "The assets she's referring to, our house, our business, none of it belongs to my son. He's still an intern, learning the ropes. She has no legal claim to any of it." Her lawyer looked defeated. She, on the other hand, looked ready to scream. Outside the courtroom, she approached me. "You've ruined my life," she hissed. "You'll regret this." I stared at her, unflinching. "You did this to yourself. Enjoy the freedom you were so desperate for." Her downfall didn't end there. After the divorce, I ensured that her behavior and the videos were known to her family and close friends. While I didn't actively smear her reputation, I didn't hold back when people asked why we separated. Word spread quickly, and soon even her family began distancing themselves from her. The travel guide, her partner in the affair, was fired from his agency after another couple we befriended on the trip shared their own videos of her behavior. Her family, initially supportive of her, turned cold. Her parents even called to apologize, admitting they'd been misled by her lies. "Had we known sooner, we wouldn't have supported her actions," her father said. While I appreciated the sentiment, I made it clear that their apologies didn't undo the damage. With the divorce finalized, I thought that chapter of my life was closed. But the ripples of her actions continued. My father restructured the family business, placing even more assets under his direct control. "We'll transfer everything to you in due time," he said. "For now, let's make sure no one can pull a stunt like this again." Months later, she made one final attempt to worm her way back into my life. She showed up unannounced at the office, looking disheveled and desperate. "I've lost everything," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know where else to go." I didn't let her finish. "You made your choices," I said, stepping past her. "Live with them." Security escorted her out, and that was the last time I saw her. Now, a year later, I've moved on. I'm thriving in the family business, having earned my first official promotion. This ordeal taught me invaluable lessons about trust and resilience. If there's one takeaway from this story, it's that entitlement and betrayal have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are poetic justice. Thank you for reading my story. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one.